most definitely that's a good possibility because, I mean, you and I've been doing this since day one. I think we grew up in the industry together.
Well, I remember playing I Stand Alone, and I love that song. I'm like, this song is so great, and there was a lot of buzz about the band. So one day my boss came in, and he threw it to me, and he says, play something else off this CD. And so I listened to it, and of course I got to play a song with a chainsaw in it, and I started playing it, and the phone lines exploded. I don't know if you remember the first time I met you played to a jam-packed bar. There's 2,000 people there, and the place was going crazy.
Yeah, well, I know that. I remember the record company calling because when it all started, like because you just grabbed it on your own, and the record company called and said, "What the hell's going on? What's going on?" I said, "I don't know." And then the next thing we found out that you grabbed a hold of a lumberjack, and the next thing it just took off. Because "I Stand Alone" was the first single, and it did really great. And then they were looking at going with "Down on Me" or something as the second single, but the lumberjack kind of made its way in front of it.
As I was talking to Jesse, I recall a story back when they first started about him jumping up on the table and carving Jackyl in the top of the table and a guy having a heart attack in the place they were at. I thought it was a restaurant or a conference room or something like that. But Jesse explained the whole story right here.
There was somebody that in the restaurant. It wasn't a person at the table I cut.
A restaurant, okay.
There was a person that ended up going to the emergency room for, thinking they were having a heart attack. And there was another person jumped over a bar to hide because there's 200-something people in that restaurant, and they plastered against the back wall, scared to death. Somebody jumped over a bar and sprained their ankle, and it ended up that afternoon cost me a little over $1 million. That was the most expensive lunch ever, and I didn't even eat. But you know what? Nobody got killed on that one either. So I'd do it again, to be honest with you, because it was definitely an introduction for Jackyl into the industry. Because word traveled around everywhere that that we were out to raise some hell. So it is something when you're especially coming out of the gate with a brand new rock band, and you're so full of piss and vinegar and ready to walk through brick walls. And I'll be honest with you, Meltdown, we still are that way. I mean, this band hits the stage every night, and it's the equivalent of Madison Square Gardens, and we don't care where we are, And we treat every gig the same, and we also realize that we're blessed to do what we do. And I got the same some bitches with me forever.
Yeah.
We actually get along and laugh and spend time with each other when we're not playing. It's how rare and how blessed are we with that.
There was a few people this year I got to interview for the first time. One of them was Kim Thayil, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. I'm not sure if I ever interviewed Art Alexakis. We'll play that coming up here in just a couple minutes as well. But another guy was M. Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold. As I've interviewed Sinister Gates and a couple of the other guys here and there. Had a great time with Sin Gates and Chris Jericho one night after a Rock on the Range show a couple years back, which is a story for another time. But, these guys are looking at about 18 years in the business now. And I asked M. Shadows if you ever thought about, when this record cycle's over and they've done their touring and the whole thing in just a couple of years, they'll be looking 20 years as a band right in the face.
Oh, man. It's so crazy, especially when you have kids. Time starts speeding up even and faster, and I hear that it gets faster and faster as you get older, and I got to say, it just seems like time's flying. I've been in this band since I was in high school, and I haven't had any adult life without being in this band, and it's just a strange thing, man. Time flies, and that's why we're trying to enjoy it, and we hope everyone else enjoys their time as well, because it's too short, it's fleeting.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Hey, give me one final thought here for you. Your biggest wow moment where you couldn't believe what was happening to you guys in the band, that you couldn't believe you had gotten this far.
Man, I think the Capitol Records thing might have been it. It's just so classic with Pet Sounds being released on Capitol and Sgt. Pepper's, the Beatles, and just the home of that music. You walk through there and all the Sinatra pictures on the wall. And then we're being taken to the roof to play on top with a huge Death Bat flag flying over Los Angeles or Hollywood. It was pretty surreal. And it was pretty, very, very cool moment in our lives. And I know in our families' lives, our parents and stuff that have grown up listening to music. It's a pretty cool moment. And every time I drive by that building on the 405 or the 101, I'm going to be thinking about that night.
I also talked to Art Alexakis from Everclear back in, I want to say, August. Saw those guys play over the summertime. Actually, a couple times right here in the Motor City. But Art went back and related a story from the beginning of their career, back in the mid-'90s. They were being played on radio stations all over Detroit, and they weren't moving that much product. I'll let Art tell you the story.
I got a good story for you. So back in '95, when So Much for the After, not so much for the After, when Sparkling Pig came out, our first single was a song called Heroin Girl. And you guys pounded it. The station over in Windsor pounded it. The other two stations at the time that were playing alternative music in Detroit pounded it. So we were getting combined in the Detroit area probably, I don't know, over 100, 200 spins a week on this song, right? So the album comes out, and we sell 200 records in Detroit. And I'm like, what? And I call the label, and they go, well, there's plenty of records there. They go, who told you there's records there? And they're like, well, Art, you can't get in the way of what we do for a business. We're the business, and we do the. I'm like, oh, yeah, great. I get off the phone with the knucklehead. I start calling record stations. I call the radio stations. I talked to whoever your PD was at the time. It was, man, we're pounding it. People are calling us, telling me they can't find the record. I call all the record stations, all the record stores, which were a bunch at the time. You know, this is the era of the CD and even vinyl and cassettes. And I call, and there is no records in the Detroit area, where they told me there was over almost 1,000. That's what Capitol told me. I flew out on my own dime to Detroit, rented a car, drove around to all the record stores, no records in the stores, and called the label, called the president of the label. I'm not dicking around with anybody else. And I told them, look, you signed us. You got my music for the rest of my life, forever. You need to get some albums in the stores, not later this week, not next week, now, today. I know they're sitting in your warehouse. FedEx them out today. I'm going to stay here till they deliver records to the stores. And I'm sending you the bill. So I'm staying in a nice hotel. And the guy's like, got it. And I call my lawyer. My lawyer calls him. My manager calls him, just beating them up. There was records at record stores the next day in Detroit.
Wow.
Just sold out. And I went on radio and told everybody that they were there. Detroit's a big deal to me. I told you, my family's from Detroit.
Right.
And it's a classic rock and roll town. Some of the best rock and roll and R&B ever has come out of Detroit.
I also had a chance to ask Art about the name of the band, Everclear. I've had a little bit of experience with Everclear, and that's enough for me. And I asked him about that.
You mean the drink?
Yeah.
I drank it when I've been clean and sober 27 years.
Okay. I didn't know if that. Yeah, okay.
But back in the day, I drank it, and I'm just like, it looks like water, but it's pure evil. I mean, I remember drinking it in like 1982, 83, and I drank during the day at the beach, and then went to dinner and drank some wine, and then I went to this party and drank some whiskey and beer, and then I went to this after show party, and they had Jungle Juice Everclear, like just trash cans. Remember, they put grape Kool-Aid in there and Everclear, a bottle of Everclear, and I woke up 2 days later in a bed in 120 miles away from my house, having no idea how I got there, in bed with 3 people and a dog.
Yeah, Everclear will do that to you.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get the name of the band? Why did you name the band Everclear?
I just always thought it's such a cool name. Why is there not like a hard, great band named Everclear? And I'm like, I'll use it. And I did. And, never had any flack from anybody about it. And I think there were a couple other bands, but we put out a record before they did. And so we kind of got the name as far as bands go. The distillery in St. Louis owns the name, but they let us use it no problem, just as long as we didn't sell alcohol under that name. And, we sell rock and roll. And we're kind of like the band. We're a bunch of goofy white boys who look innocuous and safe. And our early stuff's pretty intense, man. It's pretty punk rock. And that's what we were. We were pure white evil in a bottle.
I was lucky to have Dave Mustaine from Megadeth on the podcast not once but twice this year. And hey, look, nobody's getting any younger, right? But I mean, some of Megadeth's stuff is so intricate and challenging. I asked Dave if, the older he gets, the more challenging some of the songs become.
Certainly a lot of it is a challenge vocally, because after my neck was broken, I had that plate stuck in my neck. It changed my voice a little bit. My voice is a little deeper now. So that's a challenge. But no.
Yeah,
it's like, rubbing your belly and patting your head, If you can do that, you can do anything.
I suppose so. Well, I didn't know you were living in Tennessee. I was going to ask you if you're going to go to the Coyotes Wings game on Thursday, but are you a Nashville fan now, or are you just...
Yeah, of course. I was a Preds fan when we lived out here. I was a Coyotes fan when I lived in Phoenix. I support our local team. I've always been like that. If I would, we heard that one of the Washington Caps guys, one of the commentators, had said something crappy about the Flyers, and said that the women and children at the Flyers game could do security at a Megadeth concert. And so I did this interview thing, and I said, "You guys can do security for us anytime. Go Flyers!" And the next thing you know, they've got us up on the jumbotron, and we're like.
Would you say that hockey's your favorite sport?
It's one of them. I love MMA because of that whole way that I grew up.
Right.
Got hurt, but that and hockey are my two probably favorites. But I love to watch surfing too if it's really big waves and it's really great. There's always the payoff too, because they cut away from the waves to people laying on the sand. God for global warming.
Another one of my favorite interviews from 2016 was talking to one of my guitar heroes, Kim Thayil from Soundgarden. I've never had a chance to meet or interview Kim before, and I found him to be really just pleasant, friendly, candid, open. He was great, man, talking about the box set of BadMotoerFinger. I've been a fan of Soundgarden since the first time back in 1991 when I played that thunderous guitar chord for the opening for Outshine. Ever since then, I've been hooked on Soundgarden. No question about it. In this clip, we talk about brand new Soundgarden stuff, possibly in 2017, his memories he had recording BadMotoerFinger, and just in general, the vibe and everything about the 25th anniversary of BadMotoerFinger.
It was heavy. It was fun. It was a odd time to do something like that for MTV. I don't think MTV was doing too much heavy except for on Headbangers Ball, but their mainstream stuff was, I just keep remembering Madonna and Michael Jackson. So.
Yeah, well, you guys changed that pretty quick in the early 90s. There's no question about that. And then I'm reading on this box set you guys have, there's like a heavier version of Outshine. Is that true?
A heavier version. There's an outtake version.
Okay.
And there's probably a few live versions. There are 2 DVDs included in the box set and 4 CDs. One of the DVDs has the Motorvision VHS. If you remember that, in 91 we released a few clips of concert footage along with some interviews. They used to do that back then. Bands would release VHS tapes at retail. You could buy at Tower or wherever. Well, anyways, we did that and had a version of Outshined on it, but we never put it out on DVD. So we're doing a DVD version of Motorvision along with a bunch of footage from Lollapalooza in 91. And so there's probably about, I think, if I remember right, there's at least 2 versions of Outshine, maybe more.
Yeah, this thing sounds awesome. I was talking to Kirk Hammett a couple weeks ago, and because it was the 25th anniversary of the Black Record, and just that there was like this 3-month span in 1991, and I was lucky enough to be on the radio through all of it, where you guys put out your record, Nirvana, the Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion records, the Black Record, the Chili Peppers. Yep. There was like this 3-month span that just changed everything in the 90s.
It was pretty crazy. I believe Ozzy put on the album then too.
Man.
If I'm not mistaken. It was pretty crazy 3 months, you're right.
Yeah. I asked Kirk.
By the way, I believe Kirk contributed a testimonial to the booklet for this.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked him when they were putting a book out with Master of Puppets and stuff like that, and I asked him about the memories and stuff. I mean, when you were putting this together, the memories must have just flooded back.
Yes, definitely so. I thought that I had retained everything that I would need from that 25-year, that 25-year period, and then I go back and listen, and then find this other, then we find this other footage, and then I hear these outtakes, and yes, memories came flooding back. I thought I had brought everything with me that I wanted to from 25 years ago, and most of the memories are pleasant this time around.
What are some of your favorite memories from recording BadMotoerFinger?
Well, certainly working with Terry. We'd worked with Terry on Loud and Love, and he's been a very good friend for this entire period of time. That was a brilliant memory because he was just a lot of fun. Terry Date, of course, just for everyone out there. Yeah. Terry, of course, has worked with, Pantera and White Zombie and. Gosh, so many people. They're not coming to my mind right now. But it was our debut album with Ben Shepherd, brand new bass player, a guy known for, probably 10 years at that time, a great musician and friend, and now we're recording with him, and he's writing with us, and that was exciting to see how these songs came out on tape. That was a brilliant memory. And being able to hear all the outtakes and the live versions brought that back. So that was definitely a sunshiny, pleasant moment.
And finally, the last thing for you here, and I'm sure you've answered this question a billion times, but are we going to be able to hear some new Soundgarden maybe next year, or 2018, or what do you think?
We're shooting for late 2017. We've already done some writing. We have some more writing to do, and then there's the whole studio process. Some people whip out albums, in a few weeks or a few months, and Soundgarden, given our different schedules, it takes a matter of months. We do something for a few weeks and then come back a few months later or a month later and revisit it. So we're hoping, and we're fairly attentive to what we do, so we want to make sure that it has the right amount. It has precision where it needs precision. It has chaos and looseness where you want the song to be wild, and has color where you want it to really shine. And we really roll the thing over, and that's our process. It's probably because you have 4 different strong opinions and 4 different songwriters without adding the addition of the producer. So it's definitely a fun and dynamic process.
Chris Cale from Five Finger Death Punch was another guy I'd never really had a chance to meet before, although our paths have crossed in the past. But in 2016, I say we became friends, or acquaintances at least, and had a great interview with him and Wes Henderson from Angel's Envy Bourbon. Apparently, they use these old finished bourbon barrels to make Chris Cale Impaled Ale, as Chris was telling us about. But first, he got into what he did before joining Five Finger Death Punch.
I actually was a bartender in Vegas for years before joining Five Finger Death Punch, so that's the natural tie-in with me. As I'm not some dude that plays bass in the band trying to sell beer. I've got a history of mixology and craft beers and whatnot. So this was a natural tie-in for me to get with these guys and come out with a brand new Chris Cale Impaled Ale. Chris Cale Impaled Ale, man, I love the name of that. Yes, hey, where were you working, by the way, before you joined the band? I worked for the Hard Rock Cafe in Vegas for about 8 years. I was a corporate bar trainer. So I would fly out to different locations that were opening up all around the world and train their bar staff. So I opened up cafes in Fiji. I opened up Vietnam. Opened up the new one in Las Vegas. And then actually, when I got the gig with Death Punch, I was behind the bar at the Cosmopolitan right there in Las Vegas when Zoltan sent me the text that I had the gig with Five Finger Death Punch. So I was actually working behind the bar when I get that text.
Boy, that's awesome. That's a great story. That's a beautiful place, by the way, at Cosmopolitan. Hey, Chris, I talked to Vinnie Paul about a month ago, and I asked him must-see places in Vegas, and here's what he had to say. And let's see if you can agree or give me some other places, because we're taking, as we do every single year, we take a plane full of listeners out to Vegas, and this year it happens in the early November. And he said the Golden Tiki in Spring Mountain, Circle Bay, Mandalay Bay, and Bocce Burger. What do you think of those places?
I enjoy all those places. Great stuff. But if you got listeners that are going to Vegas with you, I highly recommend Vegas indoor skydiving. It's unlike anything you've ever done before.
Really? Okay. I haven't done that before.
Recommend that. Oh, that's great. Yeah, a huge fan underneath you, blows you up into the wind. That was actually that was my first job in Vegas when I moved out there, was an indoor skydiving instructor. So
I see you guys got this Project Freedom. I saw you tweet it out and put it on your Facebook and stuff. What's that all about?
Oh, man, I am super excited about this thing, actually. We've had such strong support from the military, and it's been really organic and natural. And anytime we get a chance to kind of give back to, those soldiers and people who served and are serving, we're going to jump on top of it. Project Freedom, I don't know how much has been released about it just yet, but it's a project involving military. It's a brand new phone that's coming out that is it's put together by wounded warriors. So the people who are actually building the phone put the phone together are wounded warriors. The people that staff the call center, so if there's some sort of issue with technical support or whatever, that's actually wounded warriors as well. And proceeds go back into charities that help out military, whether it be those suffering from PTSD, homelessness, medical care, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a huge, huge thing, and it's projectfreedom.com that you can go and get more information about that. We've always had such huge support, and those guys have the hard job. Our job is easy. We got a big voice, a big platform, and a huge amount of supporters out there that are able to help. So we're happy to use that voice any chance we get a chance to.
Back in April, I got the call that Rob Zombie wanted to promote his new movie 31, as well as his brand new CD, which was about to come out. And I'll tell you what, I was on vacation, but I wasn't leaving the area. The kids were in school. I was just kind of getting some stuff done around the house and doing whatever. And I'm like, of course I'll come in and talk to Rob Zombie. I asked him about the writing process for the brand new record, and we also started talking about the White Zombie days and how his career took off thanks to Beavis and Butthead. But first, you like having a studio right in your house? I mean, do you come up with ideas in the middle of the night and just head down to the studio and try to plug in and put some ideas down, or do you like that?
Well, I don't ever do that. I mean, I can't imagine trying to wake John up in the middle of the night to lay down guitar tracks.
Well, I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about like yourself, just...
No, never. I mean, we pretty much record, I've always recorded on a real schedule, like a 9 to 5 schedule, because what I always found was, some bands like to record all night or do this and that, but I always found there's a certain burnout that sets in after 8 hours, and you think you're doing kick-ass stuff, but it's probably just a lot of junk. Yeah. So we come in fresh, and when we're burnt out, I just can feel it. I go, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah. Listen to this record. It strikes me because, of course, there's a bunch of actualities in all your records. Do you ever have a problem using some of the stuff from these old movies?
Sometimes. I mean, more so now than before, because back in the day, no one knew what anything was, and no one could find anything. Right. But, now everybody's lawsuit happy and crazy, and every once in a while,
Yeah, do you have a team of lawyers out there making sure that everything you use has gotten permission?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a problem. The only one, but people are cool about it. One of the funny ones was on the last record on Dead City Radio. There's a clip of Reverend Jesse Jackson talking to a crowd at I think it was at the Watts Stax concert, and everyone's like, "Well, we know who that is. We got to get permission." There was nothing funnier than seeing the contracts back and forth between me and him, with both our names signed. He was totally cool about it. It wasn't a problem, but it was just kind of funny.
But you're right, because MTV at the time, you had to have a video out. And, of course, Thunderkiss 65, if I'm not mistaken, sat around for a long time. And then, if my memory serves me, Beavis and Butthead kind of watched it, and your career kind of exploded from there.
Yeah, this video was kind of old by that point, and we had gotten played on Headbangers Ball and sort of the late night stuff. And, we had done okay. Like, the record had sold like 150,000 copies or something like that, but it wasn't a big hit. It was just, whatever, modest thing. And then, Beavis and Butthead, which was obviously hugely popular at that time, played the video, but what happened was they played it during the day, rather than like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was instantly started taking off. And then from there, MTV saw the spike by Beavis and Butthead playing it, then MTV put it into regular rotation, and then when that happened, it exploded. I mean, it exploded in a way that things don't explode anymore. I mean, we literally would go from like selling 2,000 records a week to 30,000 a week to 50,000 a week to 60,000 a week. I mean, it just went crazy. It was insane.
Yeah, I remember playing that song for the first time on the radio and thinking, man, this sounds like some sort of like killer like Black Sabbath riff, and I loved it right away. And then it kind of just disappeared. And I found a record of it and I took it home with me and I loved it. The old vinyl copy of that. So it was cool. That kind of revived your shot your career up to new heights.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even revive it because there was no career.
Right.
I mean, we really went from playing like bars that were empty to arenas in the space of, a year and a half. That
was around the time, if I'm not mistaken, were you guys doing some touring with Pantera too?
Yeah, we had toured with everybody, but I mean, I remember that the run-up, we toured on that record for 2.5 years, solid, and we toured with everyone. It's Testament, Anthrax, Pantera, Danzig, Megadeth. I mean, we were out with everybody, literally everybody.
There was a couple real moments that I just had to get on this podcast because I just thought it was so important for a number of reasons, one of which just to shed light on an addictive problem, whether you're in a rock band or whether you're just, Joe Blow going to work 40 hours a week or not. But one of them was with Matt Dirito from the band Pop Evil, who's been clean and sober now for 3 years. And the other was with Chris Henderson, the guitar player for Three Doors Down, who's not only been clean and sober for a few years, but also dropped 107 pounds. And I asked Chris, because I've known guys like this, that if he has an addictive personality and just has to be addicted to something. Like right now, he's addicted to working out.
I'm 100% addicted to working out and every day, 6-7 days a week. I mean, if there were more days in the week, I would do it more days in the week. But it's my thing. And like you said before, addictive personalities. I spent many years, addicted to many things and gave all the bad stuff up for the good stuff. And so now I'm addicted to working out. And it's working out great because my blood pressure's normal. I'm 180 pounds where I was 280. You know what I mean? So things are great.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody who will remain nameless, but their change in life became their son was born. Like, what was the change in life for you?
Well, when I got sober, in my case, when I got clean, that was the beginning of it, and when I figured out that I could live my life without the use of substances to change the way that I felt, I still needed to change the way that I felt. Does that make sense? So even though even though the chemicals were gone, I still didn't feel good about who I was. 'Cause I was overweight. I was sleeping all day, and I was pale, and my skin was broke out, and I was just this big fat slob guy. You know what I mean? I wasn't happy. And once I took all the masking, chemicals out of my body, I saw myself for the first time in 20 years in the mirror, and I was like, I don't like that guy. And that's why I think I used. One of the many reasons I used. So I was like, you know what? If I've got to change everything, one of the things I have to change is everything. So let's start changing, man. So I did.
What was your first change?
The first change was just my diet. You know what I mean? Aside from the drugs and alcohol, the second change was diet. The internet's out there. Google. You can Google anything you want to do. So I figured out that Twinkies weren't good.
They're not? That's crazy. I know. What a revelation.
And I figured out that French fries weren't good and things that weren't good. And I just started replacing these bad things with good things, man. And sooner or later, before I knew it, I was down 10 pounds, and I was like, I'm on to something. So let's cut out soft drinks, and then let's cut out milk, and let's cut out cheese, and let's cut out all these bad things. And, 3 years later, I'm 107 pounds lighter. And, man, I ran a half marathon. I've done a lot of really cool things, CrossFit like crazy, and Olympic lift, and, and it's starting to rub off on other people without me going, hey, you guys need to do this with me. I just do my thing, and people are going, they're coming over to me going, hey, what are you doing? Man, maybe I should try that. So.
Well, you become an inspiration inspiration to a lot of people, just whether you realize it or not, even with your Instagram, just by people watching. I'm sure look, I followed Jimmy Johnson on his Instagram, and I started watching him do all his biking stuff, and I'm like, man, I want to do that, and so that's kind of how it works.
Well, fun is contagious, man, and health is contagious. It's good, Bad things are contagious too, so if you keep the bad things offline, people won't gravitate towards them.
That's Chris Henderson from Three Doors Down. The following week on the podcast, I talked with Matt Dirito from Pop Evil, and I asked him if he knew when the exact moment was that he realized he had to sober up.
Yeah, there absolutely was. It was one day I decided, and I haven't looked back. And what's funny is a lot of people think it takes till you hit rock bottom and everything like that. And I hit rock bottom, and I still didn't stop drinking for a long time. For me, I had a bad night. We were actually celebrating our song "Deal with the Devil" going number one, right? So we're out, we did dinner, we did drinks, we're on the beach. And then, there's a twist of events, and I ended up badly at first because I've been drinking way too much. And I woke up the next day and went through the usual rigmarole of, who do I owe apologies to and all that kind of thing. I'm just feeling like crap. And so I go up to my tour manager and I say, hey, man, I'm really sorry about last night. He says, yeah, I know. I said, no, you don't understand, man. I really feel bad about it. He's like, yeah, I get it. And throughout the day, I kept trying to apologize to him. And then I realized, my word didn't mean anything anymore. They had gotten so used to me getting messed up and apologizing for it that, they just come to expect it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, if I was really sorry, the definition of that means doing everything in my power to make sure that I don't do that again. So even if that means, I obviously can't say, well, I was drunk and have that be an excuse. You're still responsible for your own actions when you drink. So, for me, it was well, I know that if I get drunk, I allow myself to get into a state of mind where I'll do these things or I'll say these things happen. So if I'm really sorry, I'll prove it to him by my actions and not just by saying I'm sorry over and over again.
And this was on tour?
Yeah, it was on tour. And I wanted my words to have meaning again.
Yeah, a lot of guys, they go off tour, and that's really when they sober up or whatever, but that must have been a difficult trick that first night and then the second night and the whole thing, huh?
Yeah, I had guilt on my side, I guess, for the first couple weeks. Just feeling bad was enough to keep me away for a little bit. Of course, that's not a permanent fix or anything like that. You get, as humans, we get over stuff. If a woman could remember exactly how painful childbirth was, she'd never opt to have another kid again. But as human beings, you go on, and as time passes, things begin to, nullify a little bit. And, that's a Disturbed reference.
Nullify, sure, right.
I don't know if that's even really a word. So, you get used to it and you think, well, everything's good now and no one's mad at me right now. And that was so long ago and all is forgiven. So I guess I'll try it again. So, I had to come up with new and better reasons and reach out for help and get help from my peers to be able to stay sober. But now I look at it people ask me, well, how do you stay sober on tour? There's booze everywhere and it's free and you don't have much as far as responsibilities and people expect you to party with them every night. And I guess the way that I look at it is going into a strip club. If you walk into a strip club, you're going to see naked chicks everywhere. So when you walk through the door, if you see, 10 sets of boobs staring at you, it's no big deal. You're not walking around with a heart on or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's all right, yeah, I know the situation that I'm walking into. And it's sort of the same thing with the booze. Is when I'm going on a tour and I know that there are going to be people partying and things like that, it goes right over my head. It's so excessive that it doesn't bother me. It's that one-on-one romance that gets me. If you were to walk into, the boom, you see a topless chick, you're going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? Hey.
Right.
For me, it's the ones that they want to catch me off guard. If I've got a day off on the beach and a crown on the rocks sounds really good, or if I go home and I'm all by myself, nobody's around for me to mess anything up, and I just want to have a glass of wine with dinner or something like that, or watch a movie at home and have a couple drinks and go to bed. Like, those are the things that I struggle with.
But can you have a couple of drinks and go to bed, or are you one of these kind of guys, and I know guys like this too, that once that faucet's turned on, it doesn't shut off?
That's exactly it. Okay. And that was the hardest thing, was figuring that out about myself, that some people can moderate it, some people can control it, some people are good at that. For me, as soon as I have a couple drinks, all the rules or guidelines I set for myself go out the window.
Yeah.
If I say I'm only going to have 2 beers, then after I've had those 2 beers, I want 2 more.
Right. Now, have you found that maybe you're a little bit of an addictive personality? Maybe something else you're addicted to now, like maybe the guns or the workouts or anything like that?
Oh yeah, 100%, man. It went from from booze to getting my charity up and running. I focused on something real positive there, and then I focused on cleaning up my eating, and then I got on to working out, and I was working out real heavy for a solid 1.5 years of it, and then I got hurt doing that, so it moved on to something else. And it was cigars for a while. I was smoking 11 or 12 cigars a day, and now I'm at the point where I know there's always going to be something. And like the guns are one thing. Like I love to go and shoot and train and do like close quarters combat stuff and pistol fighting. I look at it as I'm going to be obsessed with something. I'm going to have one thing that's getting me all the time, even if I break away from my diet, if I lose on the exercise, if I start smoking cigars, whatever I got to do to get me by that makes sure I don't pick up the bottle again, that's okay. Because I know it'll just be a phase. If I'm smoking 10 to 12 cigars a day, it's going to be for, a month or maybe 2 months until I can figure out something else to substitute. And it sounds terrible, but as long as I've never turned into a jerk from smoking cigars.
Well, I was a smoker back in the day until I was about your age, actually. And when I quit smoking, it's like I had to find something that I could be addicted to that would force me not to smoke. So that's why I started playing hockey and doing a lot of stuff with cardio, because it's like, therefore, I couldn't smoke because you would lose your breath and the whole thing. So I kind of really ramped up workouts or whatever, I guess,
That's a great idea, and I guess the other side of the coin there is, figuring out things that you can do on the road. For me, because we travel so much, because we tour so much, it can be hard, unless you're super, super dedicated like Chachi was, to working out, getting up. That was his main focus, and his only thing was to go to the gym every day,
right,
and get his workouts in. There's so much downtime on the road, and you can run into a real lack of resources too, as far as finding something close to you that you enjoy doing, or being able to make things work. There's just a lot of downtime in the day.
Another tour that came through the Motor City in the summer of 2016 was the Make America Rock Again tour. That's what the guys from Alien Ant Farm, Trapped, Drowning Pool, Tantric, Saliva as well. Well, the bass player for Saliva is Brad Stewart. He was the original bass player for the band Shinedown. And so I asked him if he'd be on the podcast. He said, sure, absolutely. We made contact a couple weeks later, and there was a bunch of questions I had to ask him about. One of which was, how did he end up co-writing Puddle of Mud's hit, Control?
Well, back in, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I knew, of course, Fred Durst was a friend of mine. We had been in different bands that played around town together.
There you go, yeah.
And so, he obviously did his thing with Limp Bizkit, and at the time, he had signed the band, Cold, and also I believe he'd already signed Stained. Well, he was looking to sign this band out of Kansas, like you said, called Puddle of Mud. Well, as part of that signing process, I guess he mainly wanted to keep, Wes Scantlin, the singer, as we all
know is a household name by now for better or for worse. I don't know. And TMZ favorite, I should say.
Right.
But at the time, he was Wes from Kansas, and no one had ever heard of his band. And so, Fred and Danny Wimmer, which Danny is now responsible for a lot of the major festivals around the United States, or they're at least a partner in festivals like Rock on the Range and Welcome to Rockville and stuff like that. But at the time, he was A&R for Fred's label, Flawless. And so anyhow, long story even longer, they flew me out to California, and I auditioned to be in the band. And as part of the audition process, they wanted us to write songs with Wes, and I threw out the control riff, which is like the main riff of the song that's pretty much played like loudly and then soft and then loud and soft throughout most of the song until the smack my ass part, of course. And so, they ended up going with Doug Ardito as for the role of bass player, and I was flown home and had to go back to like waiting tables and like figuring out what the hell I'm going to do with my life, which luckily they ended up, Control became their first single, and it exploded up the charts. They had a lot of backing with Jordan Schur at Geffen at the time, and it got the band, I think they almost got to a platinum selling record just off the power of that one song. And luckily for me, I managed to work out a songwriter split with Wes, and I had a pretty good share of the song as, the music was right anyhow. So from that sort of led me into Shinedown, or actually I met Brent Smith from the success of Control, and we ended up writing songs together and forming Shinedown after that. So kind of a even though I didn't make it in Puddle of Mud, I was able to create our own band from the ground up.
This interview was one of my favorites of the year. First of all, there was no time constraints. We could have talked for as long as we wanted to. I think we ended up talking for 40 or 45 minutes, something like that. Really, there was nothing said about don't talk about this or don't talk about that. And plus the fact that Brad is such a great guy. He's so chill and laid back. If you're a Shinedown fan, definitely go back and revisit this interview because he talks a lot about the beginning of Shinedown, the first couple of records, his exit from the band, and a few other things as well. But one of the stories I wanted to get on this Best Of podcast was one of the stories that I'd heard over the years about them and a backstage confrontation with Eddie Van Halen, which is a funny story, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
Well, this was at a time where Eddie, I think, was struggling. Let me just preface this with just saying that he was having some issues, I think, just in his life. I don't know if it was alcohol or drugs, but he would show up to our dressing room with his guitar on, and like his lips were like purple, and he'd have a bottle of Smoking Moon Merlot in his hand.
Well, that was the time when Sammy Hagar said, "Hey, Eddie, why don't you use a glass?" And he said, "It's in a glass."
Yes, that's right. Exactly. And he's got a good point. It's all right.
Hey, that's logical as far as I'm concerned. But go ahead. So Eddie walks in.
So yeah, he walks in. We're in our dressing room. This is only the second or third show I want to say that we're into it. So, I mean, we're like little kids. We're just sitting there. We're just glad to be there, man. We don't want to rock the boat. We kind of come in, keep to ourselves, rock our show, and so he comes in and he starts messing around on the guitar, I think, and he plugs into Jason, had like this practice amp that was a crate, and he was like, freaking Hagar plays these pieces of shit. It sounds like shit. And we're like, dude, it's just a practice amp, And then so he unplugs. So then Brent was in the bathroom, and I guess he had washed his hands, but there was no paper towels or something to dry his hands. So Eddie comes up and shakes his hand, and Eddie goes, well, man, would you piss on your hand? Now you're going to shake my hand? And Brent, jokingly says, yeah, Eddie, you got me there. I pissed on my hand just to shake your hand and this and that. And so I think he thought he was serious or something. So he jumps up on on the table where our deli tray is, and he sticks a lit cigarette into the rolled up piece of turkey on the deli tray. And he whips his dick out and starts pissing on the turkey. And it starts smoking, and it puts it out, and then he just jumps down, and he said, this is called the smoking gun. Go feed that to your tour manager. And then he walks out. And we were just like, what just happened? It was almost like a psychotic episode or something, because it made no sense. We didn't provoke him. We're like I said, we're trying to be as nice as we could possibly be. And so, yeah, sure enough, he came in a pistol or turkey.
It sounds like something from Spinal Tap.
It was so weird, man. And then, next thing you know, we weren't being invited to catering. So they started inviting us to catering, and then they stopped giving us deli trays. So I think it ended up being a good thing for us. We could go in and eat catering, but we didn't have cold cuts every day or something.
And to wrap up this Best of Radio Chatter podcast, we'll play a couple excerpts from my interview earlier this summer with Corey Taylor, of course, from Stone Sour and Slipknot. Slipknot came through the Motor City in a hot, sticky night in the middle of summer, and Corey was nice enough to take a few minutes and talk with us before the show. And one of the topics was what's going on with Stone Sour. We're going to hear some new stuff in 2017 or what?
We have 18 songs demoed and written that it's the best material we've ever written. Like this album, that next Stone Sour one, is going to eat people. I'm an old school guy. Yeah. I think most of us are. You know, the thing that I loved about those great albums is that you would get it and you would want to study everything, you know? So I'm going to try and meld that world with the electronic world and see if those two can kind of coalesce and coexist, you know? So we're looking at, we're getting art together already. We're starting to really get stuff together, like really see the vision of it and just put together just a kick-ass rock and roll album. A little heavy, a little rock, a little punk, a little soft stuff in there. It's gonna destroy people.
We also talked about his cameo appearance on the Zakk Wylde song "Sleeping Dogs."
It was weird because they wanted to go with it as a single, and my record company, my record label, was worried about them going right away because they didn't want it to clash with one of my songs. It's so stupid, the politics, man. I was like, come on, this is a killer tune, you know? I mean, if it wasn't, I wouldn't have done it, you know, especially, being friends with Zakk. And so it was just one of those things where they kind of had to hold it back, did a version without me. That it was actually the one that I heard, that Zakk sent to me. He's like, I want you to sing on that. I was like, yeah, God damn it. So either way, it sounds great. It's such a great song, and it really represents everything about him that you love, especially that tune. It's got that somber kind of, almost like that Allman Brothers vibe to it, and plus he's just shredding like crazy. And he's such a great singer too, so it was really cool to be on that.
Yeah, I think I just heard a story about him and the Allman Brothers where he was playing with them one time and he was getting really loud and fast. I'm like, dude, you're with the Allman Brothers. He's like, I know, this is my favorite band.
All right, it's like I can't help it. I have so many stories about that cat because I've known him since 2001, and so I've seen him on both sides of the fence. If you understand, right, he is a maniac, dude. when I sent him the vocals for Sleeping Dogs, right, and he sends me this really weird video on my phone, and it's him listening, it's him shooting video, right, and he's listening to me sing, and he's going, he's doing the Zakk nod, and he goes, Barbara Ann, get Corey on the phone. I think we got something. We're going to start our own Hall & Oates. I think it's going to be really good. Father Corey, you're doing something great. I was dying.
He called it Simon and Garfunkel yesterday.
Yeah, totally. He's got like every 10 seconds, Father Corey, we're going to kill people with this 70s side project.
But listen, I'm a journalist. I'm in the media. I have to ask the hard-hitting questions. That's when I pulled out, who are some of your favorite WWE superstars?
Oh, man. That's a tough one because I'm a fan going way back.
Now, see, I have this fight with people at work. The Attitude Era was the best era as far as I'm concerned.
I agree, but I don't. Growing up in the 80s era, it just, maybe that was just because I was a kid.
Well, I was a kid too, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I will give you my two from my favorites from when I was a kid, which was Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
Right. The man. Miss him to this day. Attitude Era, Stone Cold,
right,
bar none.
Yeah.
Bar none, dude. Those are my two favorites of all time.
And finally, to end the podcast on a happy note, on a laugh, I texted my friend Johnny Chow from Stone Sour. And I said, listen, Johnny, I'm talking to Corey Taylor coming up here in a few days. Give me something to talk to him about that he won't expect. I do that from time to time. I'll text people that know the artist or they're in the band or whatever, and sometimes they give me some really good stuff, like this time. Apparently, boredom set in on a tour with Stone Sour a few years earlier, and Corey started singing Kickstart My Heart, but changed the the lyrics to Kickstart My Fart.
Yeah.
Did you sing it?
Do that.
Well,
no.
I might have
No,
a friend
I didn't
named
sing
Johnny Chow. I don't know.
Oh, damn it. Chowda. No, the funny, that came from being bored backstage at a Stone Sour show, actually. I was sitting there.
Ago. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
God. This was like 3.5 years ago. And I was sitting there and I just started laughing and I just started rewriting the lyrics. And I just started singing it for the guys. But it's not even in Vince Neil's voice. It's just in that, when I get gash from bench. Yeah, really, really bad. Yo, steamed broccoli is a problem for me. My fat, kickstart my fat. And I just did this whole thing. And we've been threatening to record it for a very long time. So if you see it, it means we broke down and we did it. But I'm not making any promises.
Put it at the end of the record, like after 8 minutes of dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it's all about the end. The end is so good. It's stupid.
And with that story from Corey Taylor, we call it a day for the 2016 edition of the Radio Cheddar Podcast. Thank you guys so much for checking it out and sharing it and tweeting it and your comments and all sorts of stuff that you guys do to help make this podcast grow. 2017 is going to be a big year as well. I can't tell you much, but I can tell you this, that I've already got an interview that I've already recorded, which I can't air for at least another 3 or 4 weeks from one of the biggest bands on the planet. All right, that's all I'm going to say. So just keep it locked right here on the Radio Cheddar Podcast. Refresh your feed, subscribe, do whatever, but definitely keep it locked right here and keep your ears open. In the meantime, have a great new year. I'll talk to you guys again in 2017, and thanks for checking out the Radio Cheddar Podcast.